Okay, so over the last few weeks, we've received a lot of questions about kids' gradings. So we've decided to do a video all about that, essentially, like how we look at the kids when they're ready to grade, the criteria we use, the different things that you can do to help your child progress faster or support them in their journey. The first thing we want to do is just discuss like a general overview of kids' gradings, because it's really important that like everybody understands what's happening and where they're going and the different grades they can get at specific times. Jiu-Jitsu is very different to a lot of martial arts. There are strict limits, or we have strict limits on when belts can be given. For example, no one under the age of, I think, 18 will ever get a black belt. That's the first thing. A lot of martial arts don't have that as a criteria. You'll see kids getting black belts at 7, 8, whatever. Okay, Jiu-Jitsu is very different. It doesn't have that.
Same with blue belt. You can't get a blue belt until you're, 14 turning 15? Or
I think so,
15 turning 16. One of the two.
Yeah.
So it's just limited by age.
Yeah, so what we have is for the kids, we have white belts, then we have grey belts, yellow belts, orange belts, and green belts. And then within those, we also have white stripes for certain and black stripes, and then solid belts for each one. I'll post up an infographic to see the ones that we use. So for the 5 to 7-year-olds, or the Pee-wees class, the highest they will be able to ever go is up to a grey and white belt, a 4-stripe grey and white belt. They won't ever be able to go past that. The reason being is if we started getting them to like grey belts, grey black belts, they would go too quickly through the grades. So they would not be able to find any competition if they wanted to compete, and they're probably not going to be at the skill level necessary for that grade either. There obviously are outliers, in which case they would probably get bumped up to our all kids programs anyway. Okay, so, and then because let's say that a Pee-wee then transitions into our all kids program at grey and white, they won't automatically get a grey belt. They'll still have to work towards that. So the idea is that, you know, we're trying to not focus too heavily on belts being the major goal of what they're trying to achieve. Like, belts are a recognition of effort that they've put in and their skill development more than anything else. Once they get into the all kids, the earliest they can get a grey belt is when they are 7 turning 8 in the year between the 7th and 8th birthday. It's the same for grey and black as well, so they're not being promoted too soon. And then yellow belt is actually the same. It's 8. The earliest they can get it is 8 turning 9. Same for yellow and black. Then orange belt is 9 turning 10 for the orange belt, and then 10 turning 11 for the orange and green belt. Then it's minimum of 12 turning 13 for the green belts. Okay, so the idea is that if someone starts with us by the time they're 7, every year to year and a half or so, they should be progressing to the next belt, but they're never going to spend, like they should have accomplished all of the belts by the time they get to like being a blue belt, because once that green belt hits, like,
we don't have
15,
a choice. Once they hit that 16 mark, we have to give them a blue belt, so they have to be ready by that point.
So what you might see is if we have a kid who's, let's say, 14 who starts in the classes, they're probably not going to go to a grey belt straight away. Number one, there's probably not going to be anybody in the competitions for them, and number two, when they turn 15 or 16, they'd have to go straight to a blue belt.
And that would be
bad.
That would be bad for them, because they'd have maybe a year of jiu-jitsu at that point, and then they'd have to go straight to blue belt. And blue belt competition, even at juvenile, is not anything to sniff at.
No, they can be really, really tough guys. Yeah. Particularly some of you guys might have trained with them in the past. You'll know what they're like. So they might not get promoted at all. And someone who's a little bit younger, let's say 10, they might go straight to a yellow belt. So they're going to get more competition in that environment. And then we can
because we can't hold them from 10 to 16 at white belt.
Yeah, because that's too long.
That wouldn't be appropriate. Unfair.
So these are the kind of things that we look at in terms of the solid belts, okay? And it is in very much an individual process. So like looking at how other children are doing, it's not a good comparison. You know, in our kids class, you will see kids that are, 8 and like 20 kilos, and you'll see kids that are 8 and 50 kilos. Like, they're two very different people. We'll see kids that train every single day. We'll see kids that train twice a week. We'll see kids that are competing regularly. Like, all of these things is what we're taking into account when we're looking at kids and when we're looking at their progression as well. We also look at how they are doing in the classes. Like, are they being good teammates? Do we see their skill level improving? Do we see them trying hard? These are things that we have to consider when we're looking at the kids because of the structure of the grading. In terms of the stripes, the stripes they're more of an indication of gradual progression. So there's not specific kind of performance criteria for each stripe. Like, then kind of done on a time served basis. But
there's like a minimum amount of time before I'll consider a kid for a stripe, and then like any time after that is added on if I think they need more time there, if they aren't showing progression in terms of like training, or if they're not training consistently, they just stay there longer because they're not consistently improving.
Yeah. And so all the criteria you'll see are minimum criteria. They're not maximum criteria. They're not things that just because you've been training 3 months, you're going to get to the next stripe, okay, or to the next belt, or maybe you've been training a year, you're going to get to the next belt. And the time between the stripes isn't necessarily going to be consistent either. It's not going to be like every 3 months you get one. I'll give you an example, and this is a real example because I was speaking to somebody yesterday about it. We had a kid, pretty much every 3 months in the Pee-wees, they were getting a stripe. Then they transitioned up to the All Kids, which is quite a jump, and it then took them 7 months to get the next stripe. Because within that class, there's a big difference between the two. And the other thing that we want to think about is when we're promoting the kids is, if a kid's struggling within the class, they're finding it challenging, we don't want them to then like just get a stripe because they've got to that next thing. We want them to get the accomplishment, like the challenge of actually having to press through that barrier to get to the next level. Like, it's very, very important for the kids to teach them that resilience, and that, things aren't just handed to them because they're at a certain time. They have to work towards that as well. And we want them to feel like, I've worked for this belt. I've not got like a white belt coming in fresh off the street. And
the belts are a marker of skill, and they, whether you like it or not, they are an indicator of what a kid's level will be at. So I can't give a kid that's not ready for a gray belt, and then let somebody come in and absolutely smash them up because they think the level's going to be better than it actually is. Like, kids will automatically kind of match their level to the level of the child that they're with, and the belt gives them a good indication of what to expect. I also can't allow like a white belt to come through and absolutely decimate gray belts without giving that kid a gray belt and being like slapping a warning on them. Like, it works both ways. I can't not promote a kid that's wiping kids out, and I can't promote a kid that is having a really hard time with kids of his level or her level. So it's like, it's hard because jiu-jitsu is such a live sport in that way.
It's so real. Like,
it really gives you
the closest analogy that I can think of is judo. When I started judo was solely based around your performance in competition. So I would go to a judo grading, and you would have to compete against other kids. Essentially, the number of matches you won would translate to like the number of stripes you got in a belt. And they were every 3 months apart. So if you went and you competed in like the orange belt category, didn't win a match, that means that you didn't get a stripe at all. Now, jiu-jitsu is slightly different because we don't have that same continual competition mindset. But it's still within the gym as well.
Yeah, we don't value competition in that way necessarily, but like, I definitely consider it to be a safety issue as well. I want kids to be actually at the level that they're at, and I want everybody to be kind of ready to expect whatever level that they see a kid with a gray belt, or they see a kid with a gray and black belt. They know what level to expect generally. I think that's a really important thing for learning to train with new people, train in competition and that kind of thing. So having levels mean something and be kind of standardized within the gym is valuable.
Yeah, it's really important. In terms of like when we give the stripes and when we give the belts, we only ever award 1 belt per day. So that might mean that, and the reason we do that is because we want it to be special. Like, unlike, again, most other martial arts where they have like a grading ceremony, jiu-jitsu is not like that. It's when you are ready for that next belt, and we want that day to be quite special. So if you notice, the kids will only, or adults as well, we only ever promote 1 kid and 1 adult per day, and that's because they're in separate classes, because it is a special day for that person. We want them to feel like, this is awesome, like I've achieved this thing, and it's just for them. That's why we set that up. So we wouldn't have like 4 people all kind of sharing that. But that might mean that we have 2 kids ready on the same day, and we have to then decide which one's going to get that belt. And that might come down to who's been training longer,
Who's been
or
training more frequently,
or they've just won a competition, or a number of different factors. And then the next, the other child will get pushed off to a slightly later date when they're ready as well. The stripe thing, we tend to do stripes, pretty much as they come up and as they're ready. However, that is again based on how well the class is doing as a whole and how well that child's done it in the class as well. So if everybody has a bad class, like no one's paying attention, no one's trying their best, that means that no stripes come out.
Stripes.
So what tends to happen with stripes is we'll get a number of kids who are all ready, and we'll be waiting to see that they're trying really hard in class, really progressing, really want to get to that next level, and then they'll all get striped together. Rather than it happening just because now is the time. We want them to recognize their stripes and their belt as a marker of their improvement, as a marker of their development, not just something that happens because they've been training for 3 months or they've done 20 lessons or any of that kind of stuff, which is why it tends to happen when they've had good sessions. Okay. So what I want to spend now a little bit of time is just talking about like how you can help your child progress. So the first thing is jiu-jitsu is very, very challenging. A lot of the people that we're talking to right now, so for yourself, I don't know if you train or not. If you've never trained, it is challenging. You are faced every single time that you train with your level. Like there are people that are going to be better than you, people that are going to be stronger than you. You are going to know where you are in the gym. That means that you're inevitably going to have sessions where you feel really good and really bad. Okay, because you'll have been with somebody who you can just absolutely ragdoll around the gym and you'll be feeling great, and then we might put you with someone who you can't do that to. Okay, now we try to be very balanced in the groups that we form, the training partners that we put together, and that's just naturally going to happen. And even in the kids, even with adults, with kids, with anybody, they have a great day at school, they're going to perform a little bit better at the gym. They've done a sports day, it's going to be a mess. So then they'll come out of that class feeling like they're not as good, not as pumped, not as technical. It's hard. Jiu-jitsu is honest. It's very true in what's going on in your life and your skill level and your progression. Okay. So to support those kids, try to get them to look at their progression not as like how we did in one class. It's not about that one class. How did we do across the course of 6 months? Have we improved? Are we putting the same effort in that we were doing before? Have we competed? If we've competed, like, how are we, doing in our competitions? Are we learning? Are we trying to develop? Are we trying to grow? Rather than just comparing ourselves to anybody else in the class, because it's not really a very good comparison. And that's the same for adults as well. Also, competition. Like, competition is it's a good thing to do. Like, it's great for the kids. Like, whether they want to win or not, it puts them in a place where they are going to face adversity. They're going to have to learn how to deal with stress. They're going to have to be in an uncomfortable environment. They're going to have to go and try and throw another human being around.
Yeah, there's not really any other sport that you'd put your kid in and then not expect them to compete. So really, they should be competing in jiu-jitsu as well. There's not really a reason not to. There's so many competitions around where we regularly send messages about competitions to go to. Kids don't need to be at any particular level to go. You don't need to know anything about it to go. You just have to show up on time and they'll tell you where to go and how to do everything if we're not there. So it's really not a thing that you have to worry about. You just should be doing it as part of your kid's experience, because that's how people get better.
Yeah, you wouldn't probably join a football team and then never play a football match. That would be a bit strange to do.
Yeah, and it would take a lot of the fun out of it as well, because so much of the fun is about competing and about, learning to win, learning to lose, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's not like the other thing is that this is a very common problem particularly with parents, is they build it up to be something it's not.
Yeah.
Like, it's just something you do on the weekend. You go have some matches, you win
have
some,
lunch,
you lose some,
you go home.
You make it an outing, you go home.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big deal whether you win or lose. Like,
No.
But what happens is, by being in that experience, you become mentally a lot stronger. your jiu-jitsu will just generally improve because you know what it's like to be in that environment, and your level will increase a lot faster. You'll also
Kids that compete regularly are also tend to be very robust. You know, they can handle stress really well. You know, they can not much shakes them. They can kind of like handle things that get thrown at them a lot more easily. It's something that we definitely notice. The more kids compete, the more able they are to handle adversity as it comes at them.
Yeah.
So
that's really crucial. And then there's a couple of other admin things, like make sure you sign your kids in, because we do track their attendance. If they're not signed into class, we can't track how many sessions they've been to.
Like if a kid doesn't meet a minimum amount of classes, I can't even consider them for a stripe. So if they've been coming to classes and they're not signed in, they're not getting their attendance tracked, and it will take them longer to get a stripe.
Yeah, and the same thing, like if they want to improve faster, they need to train more and then put the energy into training as well. It's very, very simple. We don't have like specific criteria for each belt because that's not really how jiu-jitsu is structured. So it's not like they need to know a certain number of techniques, but what we do tend to look at is like, are they making kind of the right decisions? So for example, if they're like trying to pass somebody's guard, are they trying to stand back up if they get knocked over? Are they trying to stay on top? If they're playing guard, are they trying to keep a good positioning in those things? And what we then look at doing is like, we want to see improvement of that over time. So are they better able to not get knocked over? Has their balance improved? Has their ability to then scramble up off the bottom and get to an advantageous position improved? And these are like technical things that the majority of people won't see, but as instructors, that's what we look for. And because we're there with the kids all the time, that's what we're really looking for. And then we're looking at how they perform against like similar
kids
types
that are
of people.
Kind of like them.
Yeah, like themselves, right?
Or even kids that are a little bit better than them, because a lot of the time we're testing their ability to handle adversity and like handle difficult situations. Like a kid that can't handle a difficult situation might not be ready to go to their next belt, because that's just going to make people come at you harder. As you get better, people come at you harder. That's the reality of it, and I want to set kids up for success in that situation, and I can't do that until that child can handle adversity, because it's just going to get harder. So we're going to test it until they're able, and then they can move forward from there.
Yeah, and when we say matching kids, it's not just based on size.
No.
Like sometimes you can have giant kids who are not necessarily very technical. They might not be very strong. They might not have like a great understanding of jiu-jitsu.
They might have just grown really fast and now they're a little bit clumsy. That happens too at that age. It's just
but it's not
hard for them.
Like we have an understanding of, like, in terms of if we look at a child who they're similar to, who they're going to be able to get good training with, and that doesn't necessarily
mean they
match
look alike.
that they look alike, which is really, really important to understand. Okay, because as someone looking out, you might be like, well, why have you put that person with that person? It's like, because we know they're going to be able to give each other good training. That's where our expertise comes into play in this. Which really kind of brings me on to my final point, is if you have any questions about the kids' training, about their progression, about what they need to work on, what we're seeing in class, just come and talk to us. Like, we're happy. We've set it up so there's about a 15-minute gap between the end of the kids' classes and the start of the adults' classes, and that's so that we can talk to people about what's going on, if they have any questions. So when we bring the either when you drop the child off, say, hey, I've got a couple of questions, can you talk to us afterwards? Or drop us a message on Facebook or whatever.
We always come out with the kids, so there's always somebody there to talk.
Yeah, and then we'll be happy to discuss for a few minutes about what they need to work on, if you have any questions, any of that kind of stuff. Like, we are there to help and try to facilitate them improving and going forwards. That's what we really, really want to do. But yeah, I mean, that's the way that we look at grading in a nutshell. It's very different to a lot of experiences that people have in life, but that also makes it super valuable. It means that every time that they go to a belt, every time that they get a stripe, they've really had to work for it. They've faced adversity, and they know that they're improving. They know they've had to put the energy and the effort and the time into that as well. And it's not just being given to them because they've completed a certain number of sessions. It's something they truly had to work for.
They did a lot of work for it.
Yeah, and that's something that as a parent you should really celebrate with them as well. Reward them for doing a great job. And the same, if they come out of competitions, whatever it is, like, try to support them in that fashion as well. So if you do have any other questions, please feel free to comment under this video or just send us a message. We'll be happy to talk to you.